Hello, happy Saturday, and welcome back to And the Gooby Goes To. We've had a lot of information come out this week. We had the Directors Guild nominations come out. We had the Producers Guild nominations come out. We got the BAFTA Longlists yesterday. And of course, we have the Golden Globes tomorrow night. So in this episode, I'm going to do a brief recap of all those nominations and long list items that have come out, and then give my final predictions for the winners of the 2026 Golden Globe Awards. Let's kick it off with DGA, since that's pretty short and simple here. I predicted these five. Most people predicted these five. It was sort of obvious at this point. We've got Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle, Ryan Coogler for Sinners, Josh Safdie for Marty Supreme, Chloe Zhao for Hamnet, and Guillermo del Toro for Frankenstein. This was pretty obvious this year. Now, these are not going to be the five that are nominated for Best Director at the Oscars. I'd be surprised if four of them do. At this point, I think it's three of them, and then we get two international surprises. But yeah, there's not too much to look at here, and I also think it's a pretty easy win for Paul Thomas Anderson as well. So we're not looking so much at upsets and surprises for the winner, but I think we're looking at which two of these are going to be snubbed out for that Oscar nomination. At least because I think two of them are going to be. But that's a conversation for a different day. Now, the PGA nominations. So I had 9 out of 10 of these predicted right. The biggest surprise, perhaps, of this announcement being Weapons hopping into this top 10. Cool nomination for it. I don't know what it does for its Best Picture chances necessarily. I think it makes sense that the PGA went for this, just given the fact of its box office success as a niche horror film. But I don't know if it moves the Richter scale too much for it in terms of its chances for Best Picture. Obviously, the biggest nail in the coffin here being Wicked for Good, the one that I got wrong in swap for Weapons. It's over, y'all. It's sad to say, but I think us Wicked heads needed to look back on this a while ago and say, yeah, it's probably not going to make it. It's probably not going to do nearly as well as Part 1 did last year, which is just a shame because I think the big narrative last year with Wicked Part 1 was, wow, this was really good, a lot better than most of us skeptics were thinking, but we don't want to award half of a film yet. So let's wait and see what happens next year, and then maybe if it's good, we'll go ahead and shower it with awards for completing the story. And unfortunately, just because of the fact that the film wasn't as strong and was not nearly as well received critically, we are in a situation where it's struggling just to get nominations now. So, Wicked missing SAG Ensemble, the PGA 10, and then we'll get into the BAFTA Longlist now, but also missing that BAFTA Longlist shout out for those 10 Best Picture films. Not great. Not great. So it is officially out of my 10. I am not sure how I'm going to be rounding out my 8 through 10 slots at this point, but we'll have to see. But unfortunately, for the first time since May, June, Wicked for Good is officially out of my Oscar Best Picture 10. Something else I'm very happy to see is sentimental value within that PGA 10. I wasn't sure, we have so many strong American films this year that I wasn't sure how many, if any, international films they were actually going to go for with PGA this year. But I'm really happy that Sentimental Value is the one that made it in. I love that movie. I wanted to be very successful throughout the rest of awards season, and I was worried that if it really missed out on that PGA nomination after getting completely blanked at SAG, that it was going to show pretty weak for the Academy overall. But I think that PGA, not as significant, it being the only international film to get one is pretty significant. I think it shows that, it's very competitive in the above the line categories with directing and acting for the Oscars. So that made me very happy. So the BAFTA long list, though, these were exciting. I think those who did very well were not so much of a surprise. One battle after another, leading with 16 recognitions on the long list, including all 5 of the performances that we've been expecting to be in the conversation: Chase Infinity, Leo, Teyana Taylor, Benicio del Toro, and Sean Penn, and basically showing up in every category it possibly could have, including, production design, costume, I believe hair and makeup as well. I'm scrolling through it right now. Yeah, sound. Really, the only place it wasn't was visual effects, and that makes sense because for the most part, it was all practical effects in that movie. So very good for One Battle. Hamnet and Sinners both doing very well. Also, both of those getting 14 mentions and not missing anything significant either. And then Marty Supreme, probably one of the bigger surprises just because, with how recent that movie came out and a lot of skepticism people had with regards to how the industry overall was going to react to that film. Getting 13 nods was great. 2 in particular, both Odessa Zion and Gwyneth Paltrow getting the long list for supporting actress. Great call out. I think this means we really do have a potential race for Odessa Zion to get in here. Again, this is going to be really hard because we're not getting these BAFTA nominations until 5 days after Oscar nominations. So at this point, this is all we have to work with. And I think that's okay because, I think we have a lot of information here to do some pretty accurate predictions for the Oscars. But it would be nice to know how some of these top fives are going to play out within the BAFTA nomination specifically. Other folks landing well, Sentimental Value did quite well, got 8 mentions. Probably the biggest miss there that I'm a little worried about is that it missed in editing. So the fact that it didn't get into that editing top 10 concerns me that it's probably out for the Oscar nomination, which only worries me because that kind of just shows that it's definitely a second tier film compared to like our top 3 or 4 films that are vying for that Best Picture win this year. And then also with 8, Wicked for Good did do well, aside from not getting that Best Picture mention. Ariana and Cynthia both mentioned in their respective acting categories, and then picking up pretty much every technical nomination that was expected. Costume, production design, hair and makeup, even score. I am happy to see that it made it into this score 10. I would love to see that Oscar nomination happen. I just don't know how much of a chance it has at this point. Obviously, it's got the Oscar long list mention as well, so it could happen. But visual effects, sound, so it's looking okay. Again, this is one of the harder ones because I would really like to know how many of these tech categories Wicked for Good makes it into, like for the actual 5 nominated, because I think for the Oscars, it's really hovering in a few of these technical categories. Production design and costume, I think it's fine, but like hair and makeup, score, visual effects, sound, I think it's kind of teetering on the edge, like of being knocked out. That would be really helpful to have, but that's why this is a lot of fun because we get to speculate and predict and try and do our best. Okay, let's talk Golden Globe winners. So the Golden Globes air tomorrow night at 8 p.m. on CBS and Paramount. Some of these categories feel pretty obvious. Some of them really do feel like a bit of a crapshoot still at this point. And I think it's going to help solidify some of these races, or could just throw it into total chaos. Who knows? But let's kick it off with Best Animated Motion Picture. So we have Arco, Demon Slayer, Elio, K-pop Demon Hunters, Little Amelie, or the character of Rain, and Zootopia 2. It's K-pop. I think people are still trying to speculate that there could be some indie or unexpected, like, animation snub that comes in at some point, but it's undeniable at this point. K-pop has everything that prior movies that were competing for this win like had separately, but K-pop has it all in one. It's got the global recognition, it's got the international appeal, it's got the music, it's got everything. I'm going to be very, very surprised if K-pop Demon Hunters loses at any point along the way. I think this is one of our safest wins for the entire season at every award show. Yeah, I don't even have like a potential upset here. So I'm just going for K-pop Demon Hunters, and that's it for that. Moving on to Best Cinematic and Box Office Achievement. So the nominees we have are Avatar Fire and Ash, F1, K-pop Demon Hunters, Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning, Sinners, Weapons, Wicked for Good, and Zootopia 2. So this is an interesting category this year, and I think, your prediction here kind of impacts how some of the other larger races are going to go. So this award was introduced 2 years ago, and a lot of people roll their eyes at it because they're like, why do we need another award, and why does it have to be based around this? A very unclear definition of what a cinematic and or box office achievement is. So, the first year it was introduced is the year that Barbie won, and then last year Wicked Part 1 won this award. So the way I look at this, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Hello? Thanks. Bye. Apologies for that. That was my doctor that I go to for my HIV and STD testing routinely for my PrEP appointments. So yeah, get tested, get on PrEP, and stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. Okay, back into this category for cinematic and box office achievements. this category has become what feels like the default for the movie that a lot of people liked, but that the Globes don't want to recognize with a prestige honor of like a significant award. Because just track record for the short track record we have so far, that's what it felt like for both Barbie and Wicked Part 1. You know, Barbie winning just this and then original song, Wicked only winning this award last year. And, you know, in both scenarios, people were really fired up about it. They're like, you know, it's a shame that you kind of give this like participation trophy to these movies that definitely deserved a more significant win. And so, as part of my potentially out there predictions for the rest of the Golden Globes, I'm predicting that Sinners is going to win this award for Best Cinematic and Box Office Achievement because I think it's going to lose in some other significant places that people aren't expecting it to. So, and I think Sinners has the credentials of, you know, it being such a box office success in a time of year, you know, it came out in the spring. That's typically quite a lull for most films. And it did so well. It did so well for the genre film it is. You know, I think a couple months ago, I would have said maybe Wicked for Good was the front runner here, but it ended up making less than Wicked Part 1 and really tanked like after the first few weeks at the box office. Something like Avatar Fire and Ash, sure, it's like projected still for over $1 billion, but like it's not being seen as like a total smash hit success in comparison to like Avatar and Avatar Way of Water. And then the others here, like, you know, Mission Impossible just doesn't make any sense to me. Zootopia 2 and K-pop Demon Hunters, you know, both here on very different credentials. Like obviously Zootopia 2 making so much fucking money, but K-pop Demon Hunters showing that, you know, the very limited time that they put it in theaters, it like completely sold it out. But I don't see either of those taking this either. And then F1, you know, has that status of being the highest grossing original concept film of all time, which is bullshit because it's based off of a loose IP, sorry. So and then maybe like if it's not Sinners, I would actually maybe look out for Weapons here. I think with all the surprise nominations, wins, pop-ups that Weapons has been having over the past few weeks, like this could be a place where that makes sense too, because Weapons was seen as such a box office success, kind of like we talked about with that PGA nomination it got. But yeah, I think based on popularity, based on how I think the rest of the awards are going to go, I am currently predicting that Sinners is going to win this one. Okay, moving on to Best Actor, Musical or Comedy. The nominees are Timothée Chalamet for Marty Supreme, George Clooney for Jay Kelly, Leonardo DiCaprio for One Battle After Another, Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon, Lee Byung-hun for No Other Choice, and Jesse Plemons for Begonia. I don't know what to do here, honestly. I think George Clooney's out. We can easily remove him, but honestly, the other 5, I could like see the presenter reading off any of those names here. I think like Lee Byung-hun is like the least likely of those 5. You know, I think that's like a Hope Diction there, and I don't think No Other Choice is quite strong enough, but it does have that Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy nomination too. So it has strength, and it has the foreign language film. I might be overthinking this. I do think it's probably just going to be Timothée Chalamet. I think when you look at the history of this award, it depends on how the split looks, like with what the top films are, whether they're like considered musical comedies or dramas. You know, like the past couple years, it's been a bit of a toss up because like last year Sebastian Stan won, but for A Different Man, but no other film in that category was like a Best Picture contender. The year before was Paul Giamatti. He was in The Holdovers being one of like the top 5 of that year. The year before, Colin Farrell for Banshees, again, like one of the top films of that year. So when you have somebody who's a front runner that's also in a front runner film, we have to whittle this down, I guess, to Timothy and Leonardo. But that's tricky too, because like One Battle is technically the stronger front runner of the 2, and then so it's like, okay, well, do they both split each other, and does somebody else kind of surge out of that? Because Blue Moon is also in Best Picture there too. So like we got 5, right? We got 5 movies here that are represented within Best Comedy. Tricky situation. All right, you know what? Here's a hot take, and I'm just going to do it. I'm going to say that Jesse Plemons takes this for Begonia. Why? I don't know. It feels right now. It's kind of an odd performance, a very flashy performance. And again, like, you know, we've got 5 guys leading films that are represented in Best Picture, Musical, or Comedy in this category. So I just don't have a great argument for anybody to like be well ahead. I think there is a decent race here. And the Globes be globing sometimes. And sometimes it leads to some crazy shit. So you know what? I'm just gonna lock it in. Jesse Plemons, my final prediction. All right, next up, comedy actress. We got Rose Byrne for If I Had Legs I'd Kick You, Cynthia Erivo for Wicked for Good, Kate Hudson for Song Sung Blue, Chase Infinity for One Battle After Another, Amanda Seyfried for The Testament of Anne Lee, and Emma Stone for Begonia. So in this one, who do I think we can just take out from the jump? I think Kate Hudson is just happy to be here. Amanda Seyfried, before the BAFTA Longlists, I was thinking like could be a surprise upset here, but given that that movie completely blanked at BAFTA, like she didn't even make the long list for Best Actress, I don't think that's even a possibility anymore. Cynthia Erivo, I think, is unfortunately out, just given that she keeps missing everywhere and the weakness of Wicked for Good overall. And so I think we have a three-way race maybe between Rose Byrne, Chase Infinity, and Emma Stone. Now, I think the performance that everyone wants to recognize for Begonia is Jesse Plemons specifically. So I think Emma Stone is out. And so we're between Rose Byrne and Chase Infinity. My thing here is, Rose Byrne keeps popping up. I keep saying that I think it's the end of the road for her, and I'm going to have to like eat all my furniture at some point because like I'm just keep being wrong. I need to see this fucking movie. But she keeps defying the odds. She's on the BAFTA long list. However, I do think and wonder if I Had Legs I'd Kick You is not seen enough by the Globes are voted by I think like 500 or 600 some international journalists. And so I don't know if this movie has enough global appeal and they could go ahead and give this to Chase Infinity. That'd be such a cool win, honestly. Yeah, I'm going to predict it. I think Chase Infinity has a strong narrative here in the strongest film of the year. And I just don't know if anyone here has quite enough gumption to overtake her. And it'd be really cool to see her give a speech. So, all right, we're going to lock it in. Final prediction, Chase Infinity for One Battle After Another. Okay, and to round out the musical or comedy categories, let's do Best Picture. So we've got Blue Moon, Begonia, Marty Supreme, No Other Choice, Nouveau Vague, and One Battle After Another. I think this is pretty easy. It's going to be One Battle After Another. I don't know why they would steer in another direction here. Like, I know, you look at last year and it's like, oh, but Amelia Perez beat Honora, and then Honora, won everything else. Fair, but Honora wasn't as loud and proud of a movie as One Battle is, and it also wasn't as much of a sensation. And I do think, One Battle just has everything going for it. And so I do think it's going to be One Battle After Another. If there were to be an upset, maybe Begonia. Begonia's another one that I had doubt in, and I guess that was just my own bias because I wasn't the biggest fan of that movie, but it's showing up everywhere. Got 2 SAG nominations, it got PGA, it's all over the BAFTA long list, so it's got the international appeal as well. So maybe that could upset, and in a crazy cool world situation, No Other Choice would be the wild card, I guess. But yeah, I do think this is pretty safely One Battle After Another. I'm going to say 75%, but we'll have to see what happens. Okay, I'm going in alphabetical order just because it's how my photos are saved. So skipping around a little bit for some people's brains, but let's do Best Director. So we've got Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another, Ryan Coogler for Sinners, Guillermo del Toro for Frankenstein, Jafar Panahi for It Was Just an Accident, Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value, and Chloe Zhao for Hamnet. Again, this feels pretty safely to be Paul Thomas Anderson's. He's never won at the Globes before, so this would be a significant first win for him. I think it's very well deserved. Again, One Battle winning Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy, I think ties into this win as well. So if there were to be an upset, I just don't know what it would be. We'll have to talk about it because I don't think Sinners is winning Best Drama. Guillermo del Toro doesn't feel right for this either. Joachim Trier and Jafar Panahi, I think, could be recognized in other categories that we'll get to. And then Chloe Zhao just unfortunately seems to be consistently hanging out at number 2, number 3 for the season. So yeah, I don't really have an alternate picked out here, but I think this is like 85, 90% going to be Paul Thomas Anderson's. Okay, heading into the drama categories, we have actor in a drama. So we've got Joel Edgerton for Train Dreams, Oscar Isaac for Frankenstein, Dwayne Johnson for The Smashing Machine, Michael B. Jordan for Sinners, Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent, and Jeremy Allen White for Springsteen, Deliver Me from Nowhere. So right now, this feels like a two-way race between Michael B. Jordan and Wagner Moura. I do think this is going to go to Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent. I'm getting uncomfortable, like, trusting the trajectory of I'm Still Here and Fernando Torres from last year, but it does feel like it makes sense to happen here as well. Wagner Moura has so much international love and appeal for this performance. The Secret Agent is very strong, and I do think they're going to want to recognize that film, and I don't think it's not going to be in Best Drama Picture. I don't think it'll be in Best International Film either, and so I think they're going to award Wagner Moura here for his performance. Excuse me. Final prediction, Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent, Best Actor, Drama. All right, actress in a drama. So we've got Jessie Buckley for Hamnet, Jennifer Lawrence for Die My Love, Renata Reinsve for Sentimental Value, Julia Roberts After the Hunt, Tessa Thompson, Hedda, and Ava Victor, Sorry Baby. Let me just say out loud, I would scream and holler for joy if Ava Victor won this category, but I'll be happy to see her at another televised award ceremony. Super deserving. Not going to be her time. I think this is very safely Jessie Buckley's win, and it's just going to continue to steamroll through probably the rest of the season. Excited to see what kind of speech she gives next, because her speech at the Critics' Choice was so charming and so elevated, and I love hearing her talk. She's just a cool person, and excited to see who else she calls out and how else she flirts with Paul Mescal from the presentation stage. So congratulations, Jessie Buckley. All right, Best Picture Drama. So I think this is where things get interesting. So nominees are Frankenstein, Hamnet, It Was Just an Accident, The Secret Agent, Sentimental Value, and Sinners. So like I said in Cinematic and Box Office Achievement, I think Sinners is going to end up losing out here at the end of the day. It feels like there's going to be some weird bump in the road for it. And to me, like, the Golden Globes makes the most sense for that to happen. And for another film to sort of rear its head as like a significant competitor in the race. And here I'm predicting Sentimental Value. Is that a Hope Diction? Maybe. But I do feel like between the PGA nomination, how well it did on the BAFTA Longlists, the fact that it's like such a strong competitor within the European film industry as well, you know, it has a slew of European Film Award nominations. I think they're going to go for it, personally. So I'm currently predicting Sentimental Value. At the end of the day, it could be very simple in that it's just Sinners, which would be great. I'd be so excited to see that happen. Again, I'm speculating here, but I'm predicting Sentimental Value to take this one. But I think an upset to look out for is honestly Frankenstein. I would very much not be surprised if they open that envelope and read Frankenstein when they award this film. So we'll have to see. Again, God, guys, we just have so many good movies this year. It's so hard. It's so fun. I just really hope. I want a shakeup this season, because I think there are so many films that are worthy of recognition. So like, if the Globes just becomes like the Sinners One Battle Show, I think it's going to be pretty boring. I want things to make me yell, things to make me scratch my head, things to make me question everything I've spent months, you know, researching and predicting and working on so far. I want fucking chaos. So I hope this is a place where it happens, because again, I think like I've seen every single one of these films except for Frankenstein. Actually, we still need to watch that one. But of the other 5, I think any of them would be worthy of this win, quite frankly. And I would just love to see some shit get shaken up. So let's see what happens. But I'm currently going to predict Sentimental Value for this one. Okay, Best Non-English Language Motion Picture. We've got It Was Just an Accident, No Other Choice, The Secret Agent, Sentimental Value, Sarat, and The Voice of Hind Rajab. So I think this one's going to go to It Was Just an Accident. I know I'm making a bold swing on Sentimental Value winning drama, and it could do that here. This could be the only place where Sentimental Value gets recognized. But with It Was Just an Accident technically being a French entry, and I think, it missed out at the Critics' Choice Awards kind of oddly, I feel like. And then, it doesn't have the director nomination here. It does have the screenplay nomination. I think they're going to want to give Jafar Panahi the opportunity to speak on this film. And I think this is where it's going to be. Other than that, I think like The Secret Agent and Sentimental Value are the other two kind of fighting with it. But we'll have to see. Again, I don't know if it's just like, Saturday morning drowsiness, or if this really does just feel so chaotic. But I'm just expecting chaos tomorrow night. I hope we get it, but I'm currently predicting it was just an accident, and I feel like that's somewhat of a safe choice. Best score. So we've got Frankenstein, Sinners, One Battle After Another, Seurat, Hamnet, and F1. I do think this is where Sinners picks up another win. Like I said, like in comparison to Barbie, getting the cinematic achievement and song awards, I think that Sinners will easily get this one. Very well deserving. It absolutely should win this one. And I don't even really think I have like an alternative here. I think the Sinners score is so far and ahead of all the others that it just feels like it's going to happen. So final answer, Sinners for best score. Best screenplay. So we've got One Battle After Another, Marty Supreme, Sinners, It Was Just an Accident, Sentimental Value, and Hamnet. So I had to go back and research a little bit because I was curious to see, how often does an adapted screenplay take this award? And, it's a little bit scattered because like obviously last year, we had an adapted screenplay win with Conclave. And then aside from that, when you kind of go back, it feels like here's the overall trend with the Golden Globe screenplay wins. They're very talky films. So like last year, Conclave, very talk heavy movie, up against films like Amelia Perez, Honora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, The Substance. A lot of those being more so like strong in screenplay in terms of like concept, but not as wordy, dialogue heavy of a film, right? And you go back to the year before, Anatomy of a Fall, very dialogue heavy film. The year before that, Banshees of Inisherin. I think the year before that, Belfast. You can kind of see the trend here that dialogue heavy movies with a lot of text tend to be favored at the Golden Globes. With that being said, I think that Sentimental Value has a very strong shot here at winning this. Very dialogue heavy movie. In place of that, I do think Sinners has a very strong chance here, just based on like concept and idea. And I would also be on the lookout for It Was Just an Accident. This could be the place where they want to, give Jafar Panahi the win. But, sometimes screenplays where that international top 5 film comes out to play. Anatomy of a Fall. The Globes was where the narrative for Anatomy of a Fall really started. And it started to really make sense. And so I'm kind of predicting the same thing to happen here with Sentimental Value. Man, I'm predicting Sentimental Value a lot. I really hope I don't blank, but who knows? So that's going to be my final answer here. Sentimental Value for best screenplay. All right. Best song. So we've got Dream as One from Avatar Fire and Ash, Golden from K-Pop Demon Hunters, I Lied to You from Sinners, No Place Like Home from Wicked for Good, The Girl in the Bubble from Wicked for Good, and Train Dreams from Train Dreams. This is a toss up between Golden and I Lied to You, kind of similar to Critics' Choice, but I think Golden is going to do it. Being so solidified in winning Best Animated Feature, that song just being a global sensation, I could see it definitely happening. So I'm going to predict Golden from K-Pop Demon Hunters for this one. Now, we're saving 2 of the most fun categories for last. So the first of the supporting acting category is supporting actor. So we've got Benicio del Toro for One Battle After Another, Jacob Elordi for Frankenstein, Paul Mescal for Hamnet, Sean Penn for One Battle After Another, Adam Sandler for Jake Kelly, and Stellan Skarsgård for Sentimental Value. This is where I think Stellan Skarsgård is going to get a win and finally re-enter the conversation. I am a little worried, like with some of these groups, that Benicio and Sean are really splitting themselves a little bit. That could change come SAG, I think, but I think for the sake of the Globes and the fact that I have Sentimental Value doing so well already, I feel like I need to give it a couple wins elsewhere. And I do think this is a place where that's going to happen. So my prediction is that Stellan Skarsgård will be taking Best Supporting Actor at the Golden Globes. And then finally, we've got Best Supporting Actress. So we've got Emily Blunt for The Smashing Machine, Elle Fanning for Sentimental Value, Ariana Grande for Wicked for Good, Inga Ibsdottir Lilius for Sentimental Value, Amy Madigan for Weapons, and Teyana Taylor for One Battle After Another. This one is really tough. I think, between Ariana, Inga, Amy, and Teyana, I could see a world where any of those 4 get awarded here. I think the safe pick is Amy Madigan. It seems like she's on like a steamroll of winning for the year. Teyana, it would be great for her to get like one big win for the biggest movie of the year. Inga, again, I have Sentimental Value doing so well, and she's sort of the crowning performance of that film, like amongst everybody. So, there could be a rally behind her. And then, of course, I've got a Hope Diction, every limb possible cross that Ariana Grande can get a win this year, but it just seems so unlikely at this point. Okay, you know what? I'm going to die on the hill. I'm going to predict Ariana Grande. This is probably the last time I'll do it and the last heartbreak I'll allow myself to have. It's probably going to be Amy Madigan, but I just have some thought that with this being a much more international voting group, that somebody else may sneak through, and I'm going to hold out hope that it's Ariana. So, final prediction, Miss Grande, let's manifest it, please, for the love of all that is holy. All right, well, that does it for this episode and my Golden Globe winner predictions. Stay tuned for my Golden Globe reactions early next week. Make sure you catch the Golden Globes tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock on CBS and Paramount, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.